while Napoleon's army was still bleeding out at Waterloo, before the ink dried on a single casualty report, before any king knew who had won. Nathan Rothschild already knew. His courier network had beaten every government in Europe by 12 hours. And in those 12 hours, he did something that would be replicated by every financial dynasty that followed him. He didn't celebrate the peace. He traded it. By the time London woke up to British victory, the Rothschilds had quietly purchased a controlling position in the British economy for pennies. The war didn't ruin them. The war made them. And here's what history never taught you in school. The same mechanism that they used in 1815 is being used on your portfolio right now. Number 1. The fog of war is manufactured. The year is 1815. It is the morning of June 19th. London does not yet know who won at Waterloo. The markets are frozen in collective dread. And in that frozen silence, Nathan Rothschild is already moving. History books never tell you this part. While generals were still counting their dead, Rothschild's private courier network, built not for sentiment, but for financial supremacy, had already crossed the channel. He knew Napoleon had fallen. He knew it 12 hours before the British government knew. And what happened next was not an accident. He walked onto the floor of the London Stock Exchange, and he sold. Quietly, deliberately. And everyone watching him drew the only conclusion fear allows, that Britain had lost. The market collapsed. Panic spread like infection through the trading floor. And in that manufactured fog, while every other investor was fleeing, Rothschild's agents were buying. Buying everything, at the price of a British defeat that was never real. This is the moment everything changed, not because of what he did, but because of what it revealed. The fog of war was not a side effect of conflict. It was the product. It was the instrument. Information asymmetry was never an accident of history. It was the architecture of dynasty. They have been using this playbook for centuries. And the same move is being made right now. Every earnings blackout period, every strategic Fed silence, every coordinated media narrative around a market event, the fog is still being manufactured. The only thing that has changed is the technology used to spread it. The Machiavellian lesson history proved is this. In financial warfare, the weapon is never the event itself. The weapon is the 12 hours before anyone else knows the truth. This pattern keeps repeating, and most people never notice, because they're always watching the battle. The dynasty is always watching the clock. And what the next point reveals is how they made sure the clock would always run in their favor. Number 2. Chaos is someone else's balance sheet. The year is 1907. New York City. The most powerful banks in America are hemorrhaging. Depositors are forming lines around the block, desperate to pull their money before the doors close permanently. Newspapers are screaming collapse. Ordinary investors are watching their entire financial lives dissolve in real time. The panic is total. The fear is genuine. But not everyone in the room is afraid. History books never tell you this part. J.P. Morgan, the single most powerful private banker in American history, is sitting in his Manhattan library, smoking cigars and playing solitaire while the financial system burns. He is not panicking. He is waiting. Because what the crowds flooding the streets understood as catastrophe, Morgan understood as inventory. This is the moment everything changed. Morgan did not rescue the 1907 panic out of patriotism or civic duty. He rescued it selectively. He chose which banks survived and which ones did not. He decided which industries would be absorbed and which would be dissolved. The chaos was not something he managed. It was something he curated. By the time the panic subsided, Morgan had consolidated more financial power than any private individual in American history. Not despite the crisis, but because of it. The same move is being made right now. Every market crash, every liquidity crisis, every moment when retail investors are panic selling into the red, institutional capital is on the other side of that trade. They've been using this playbook for centuries. Your fear has a buyer. It always has. The Machiavellian lesson history proved is this. Financial chaos is never equally distributed. It is a transfer mechanism. Wealth does not disappear in a crisis. It moves, and it always moves in the same direction, toward whoever had the composure to treat the panic as a purchase order. This pattern keeps repeating, and most people never notice, because they're inside the chaos. The dynasty is always outside it, holding the ledger. And what the next point reveals is exactly how they made sure the ledger was always written in their name. Number 3. Governments borrow. Bankers inherit. The year is 1814. Napoleon's empire is collapsing at the seams. 20 years of continental war have left every European throne financially gutted. France is broken. Prussia is exhausted. Even Britain, the war's ultimate victor, is drowning in debt so vast its own treasury cannot calculate the bottom of it. Every king, every emperor, every prime minister on the continent needs the same thing desperately. They need money, and there's only one place left to get it. History books never tell you this part. The Rothschilds did not simply lend to governments. They lent to all of them, simultaneously. They financed Britain's war effort through bonds while maintaining credit lines to the very powers Britain was fighting. This was not contradiction. This was architecture, because the Rothschilds had understood something that no crowned head in Europe had yet grasped, that sovereignty and financial dependency are mutually exclusive. You cannot have both. What happened next was not an accident. As governments borrowed, they surrendered something more valuable than collateral. They surrendered leverage. Every loan carried terms. Every bond issue came with access to policy, to information, to the quiet rooms where decisions about war and peace were actually made. The interest was never just financial. The interest was influence, compounding across generations. The same move is being made right now. Sovereign debt is not a modern invention. It is an ancient leash. They have been using this playbook for centuries. And today, the nations carrying the heaviest debt loads are the ones whose economic policy is most legible to institutional capital before it is legible to their own citizens. The Machiavellian lesson history proved is this. Kings spend power to hold their thrones. Bankers collect it at interest. One generation borrows to survive. The next generation inherits the bill. And the generation that issued the loan inherits everything else. This pattern keeps repeating, and most people never notice, because they're taught to see governments as the apex of power. They have never been taught to read the debt. And what the next point reveals is the exact structural move they used to make sure no single government could ever call the debt due. Number 4. Loyalty is a liability they priced out. The year is 1798. Mayor Amschel Rothschild is aging. His counting house in the Frankfurt ghetto has become something no one in the Holy Roman Empire fully understands yet. Not a bank exactly, not a merchant house exactly, but something new, something without a name. And he is looking at his 5 sons, and he is not thinking about legacy the way other fathers think about legacy. He is thinking about exposure. He is thinking about collapse. He is thinking about what destroyed every financial dynasty that came before him. History books never tell you this part. The decision to send each son to a separate European capital, Nathan to London, James to Paris, Salomon to Vienna, Amschel to Frankfurt, Karl to Naples, was not a family expansion plan. It was a risk architecture. Mayer had studied the Italian banking dynasties that preceded him. He had studied the Medicis. He had watched how singular concentration, one city, one throne, one political alliance, was always the fatal vulnerability. One war, one revolution, one betrayed king, and a century of accumulated wealth could be confiscated overnight. What happened next was not an accident. By distributing his sons across 5 competing power centers, Mayer did something no banking family had ever done with such mathematical precision. He made the Rothschild network politically uncollapable. No single revolution could touch all 5. No single monarch could retaliate against the whole. If France fell, London held. If Vienna turned hostile, Naples absorbed the pressure. The structure was not built on loyalty to any nation. It was built on the deliberate, cold elimination of loyalty as a financial variable. The same move is being made right now. Every multinational corporation domiciled across 7 jurisdictions, every ultra-high net worth family with assets spread across Singapore, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. They're executing the same calculation Mayer made in a Frankfurt ghetto over 2 centuries ago. They have been using this playbook for centuries. Diversification was never sold to you correctly. It is not a wealth-building tool. It is a dynasty protection tool. And the version they sell to retail investors is a deliberate dilution of the original. The Machiavellian lesson history proved is this. Loyalty is a concentration risk. Every empire that fell because it could not imagine existing without the thing it was most loyal to: one currency, one country, one king. The Rothschilds survived every political catastrophe of the 19th century, not because they were powerful, but because they had priced loyalty out of the equation entirely. This pattern keeps repeating, and most people never notice, because they are building portfolios. The dynasty was always building a structure that no single point of failure could ever bring down. And what this channel will keep revealing is the same truth across every era, every empire, every collapse. The people who built generational wealth were never the ones who played the game the hardest. They were the ones who quietly, methodically rewrote the rules before anyone else knew a game was being played. The pattern is now complete. For keynotes, for centuries, one unbroken blueprint. They manufactured the fog while you watched the battle. They harvested the chaos while you felt the panic. They collected sovereignty while governments celebrated borrowed victories. And they eliminated every loyalty that could have made them vulnerable. None of this was genius. None of this was luck. It was architecture, built deliberately, refined across generations, and still operating today inside every market move, every debt ceiling, every coordinated silence before a financial earthquake. History was never a story. It was always an instruction manual, and it was never written for you. The question is no longer whether this playbook exists. The question is whether you will keep funding it from the outside or finally learn to read it from within. If this video rewired something in how you see money and power, the algorithm responds to one thing above all else: people who refuse to stay uninformed. Subscribe, and do not look away.